So earlier this year, I joined the Suppressor gang and I purchased my first can, the Polonium, which is a dedicated 5.56 can. And I chose the ASR mount because it is hub compatible. And I've been using that on different things. Now I think the ASR mount's kind of ugly. So I always thought to myself, hey, why is these mounts and all these systems so complicated and expensive? I kind of just wish that there was something that wasn't that way, because we're trying to simple max. You know, I talked about this last week, overthinking, paralysis by overanalysis, that sort of situation. A lot of people find themselves in whenever they're building a AR-15 for the first time, or their 10th one, doesn't really matter. People often think about, well, what kind of attachments do I want? What kind of suppressor compatibility? As suppressors get more and more popular, you're seeing people start to equip more of their rifles to be able to go suppress. You are seeing suppressors become common use, which I think is a really cool thing. And now with these NFA tax going away next year, you're gonna have a lot more people jumping into the NFA game, whether that's SBRs, what we're talking about today, suppressors. So the suppressor that I've got here today is the Griffin Armament 30SD-K. Now, a quick disclaimer, this can was sent to me by Griffin Armament, so there's gonna be a little bit of bias there, right? I'm definitely favorable towards them because they sent me a free suppressor. I did pay the tax stamp, so there is that aspect to it. But getting a can for free and paying $200, I'm very happy with that. Now, with that being said, just because I got this can sent to me for free doesn't mean that I didn't choose it. So they gave me the keys to the castle. They said, hey, go to our website, pick whatever can you want, and go from there. And I said, okay, cool. And I chose this. The reason I chose this is primarily the Gate-LOK system, which, if you're not familiar with that, it mounts directly onto mil-spec A2 bird cages, A2 flash hiders. We will talk about what that really means here in a second, because not all flash hiders are created equal. People don't really understand how specs can be different from brand to brand, and we're gonna go through a whole list of brands that this can actually works with. This is currently mounted on a BCM and a Colt. Those are the ones I found to work the best. And then there's a couple others that we'll talk about. Second reason that I chose this can is because it looks like the Knight's Armament NT4. If you're not familiar with that, that's like the suppressor with the little holes on it, but it looks very similar and it mounts in a similar fashion. The Knight's Armament uses, I think it's called the M4QD muzzle device, where it's got a little like cut to it. This just uses normal A2. So in my opinion, this is better because it's not as proprietary. I did ask Griffin Armament if these cans fit on the Knight's M4QD, and they said they do not. Third reason I chose this can is because it's a 30 caliber. So I got a couple of 223 cans already. I have a AEM5 I have not mounted yet, and then I have a Polonium. Now, I feel like it's wasteful if I were to just get another 5.56 can, because it's 5.56, you know, you're suppressing a loud supersonic gun. It's gonna be loud either way. You're never really gonna get it that quiet. I still like suppressors because if I have to fire them without ear protection, raccoons often will raid my chicken coop, and if I need to take a step out and take a shot, then I don't have to worry that much about wearing ear protection. It can still damage your ears. However, it's going to damage it way less if you have to shoot this gun inside or outside. I'm not shooting raccoons from inside my house, but if I did have to do that, if a raccoon did a home invasion and I had to blast him, hopefully I can preserve my hearing just a little bit better, right? That's why I like, you know, suppressors are very cool. You may say, is he really wearing a bandolier? That seems kind of performative. Well, guess what? You'd be right. I just want to say thanks to the sponsor for this video, the ammo sponsor, which is Armament Defense Co. He has been keeping my rifles fed with a good supply of 62 grain 5.56 that we're able to do these kinds of tests with the can and just shooting other rifles, some other content that we have coming up. So I'm very thankful to him. When you buy from him, you can get, can't even see it, it's not even in frame. You can get this sick can of 62 grain that's filled to the brim with a bunch of bandoliers. But if you're not looking for 223, he's got all kinds of different other rifle calibers as well, 7.62 by 39, 308, and then pistol stuff, 45 ACP, 9mm. You can go buy in bulk, and I encourage you to go show your support to him because he has supported me. Thank you, Armament, for sponsoring the video. Now let's continue moving on. Okay, so when it comes to seeing if these flash hiders work with the Griffin system. Okay, so the way that it typically works, so you've got your suppressor here. Chad, are we seeing that? How's the brightness? I hope it looks good in post. So basically the way it works, you can do this with one finger. So you can go in here, put your both fingers on this, come in here. You push that plate with your thumb and then you pull up, and then there's your gate, right? Funny how that works, Gate-LOK. And what you do is you take your A2 bird cage, say this was installed on a rifle, and you stick that right through there, and you want to index it on the sides here where the flat portions of the flash hider are. So you stick that in, you get to about the last ring somewhere in there, and then you go to close the gate on it. Now, here's where we start to run into issues, and I'll tell you why. So this one will not go. It'll get jammed right about there and it won't close it on it. The reason is because these little grooves in here are not cut deep enough.
So we're actually gonna take some measurements here in a second, like that guy who exposed the P320. These grooves, particularly this one in the back, is not cut deep enough. So if we take a measurement here, I think this came off of a Davidson defense rifle. Let's take a look. So come in here with the calipers. Shout out to Hammy who gave me these. So we're getting about 18.72 millimeters. Can you guys see that? Around 18 millimeters. Make sure I'm in the grooves here. 18.6 is what we'll call it. So we'll do 18.6 millimeters. Okay, now let's take, for example, here is the Colt. You can tell, maybe you can't see it. We'll do a little zoom in here on post. But the grooves look different. They look a little bit deeper and a little bit more cut in on the Colt. So let's actually take a measurement of that. Make sure we're zeroed, yep, okay. So come in here, okay. 16.12, so 16.1 on the Colt. So we'll write the first one is, I guess, Davidson Defense. It doesn't really matter what it is. It's one that's not in spec is what it is. And then the second one, 16.1 on the A2 Colt USGI, I guess you would call it. This is on a military surplus, or I'm sorry, a police surplus rifle. Now let's try another one that worked. This is a BCM flash hider on the rifle that we've been shooting, that you've been seeing footage of. Now let's take some more measurements. Get on the grooves, get in the spot. Okay. This one's measuring in at 15.89, so 15.9 BCM. Okay, so that's kind of what I found, is that around 16 millimeters is what works. So if those grooves just are not deep enough, it's not gonna fit. So let me actually show you how the can works. So it will slip. You gotta do it on the sides here where the flat plates are. It will slip over. So interesting, this is a good example. So the BCM actually only works on one side. It will not fully close on this particular side. I don't know if that's the fault of the slip rings here, but I found that it only works on one particular side. So on this side, or not the slip ring, I think it's the fault of the shims. And then it closes in and there's positive contact. And you know that there's positive because the little plate back here, kind of bad footage, it will slip under. I don't know.
So my audio straight up died here, but what I was saying was that plate, that little part goes under the plate and then it rises above it. I'll show a little picture here as well. So I was yapping here, talking about the wiggle. There is a little bit of wiggle, a little bit of play in the suppressor. It doesn't really bother me, but if you're somebody with like severe OCD, it might trigger you. And then you can take it off one-handed really easily, lift that gate up and then wiggle off your can. So pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Okay, so for the rest of the video, I think I was just talking about brands, what works, what doesn't work. So courtesy of my local gun store, shout out to my good friend Andrew who hooked it up. I brought the can into my local gun store and I tried it on a bunch of different rifles. So we're gonna go through the list here and what works, what doesn't. We'll have a yes and no sheet up on the board, and then as we call them, we'll add them to the left or to the right. All right, Colt A2, obviously yes, this is what it's made for. This is what the manufacturer said it's made for. It's really the only thing that they can guarantee works outside of their own Griffin Armament made muzzle devices. The Colt A1, I do have that M16A1 upper, and that does have a Colt flash hider on it, but it does not mount to the can. Next up is going to be BCM. So obviously BCM, we just tested that it works, but it will not work on the A2X. So that's if you're looking to, you have a 14.5 pin and welded and you have a BCM extended flash hider, not gonna work. The one that I have, actually the diameter is too big. It won't even get started into the can, so hey, RIP. Griffin muzzle devices, obviously these are gonna have the tightest fit according to them. So if you can't find a mil-spec flash hider, or maybe you think they're ugly, whatever the case is, you can go buy one from Griffin and they're gonna have the best fitment of all the different flash hiders available. CAC QD, mentioned this earlier, we'll mention it one more time. The M4 QD does not work with this can. It's a similar system, but it's still proprietary, and according to the manufacturer, it does not work. Next up, Davidson Defense, we tested that in the video, does not work. Rock River, I got access to one of those flash hiders as well, does not work. PSA, this is a big one right here. A lot of guys like the PSA, but unfortunately, it does not work. Ones that I had, I mean, hey, tolerances are tolerances. You might have one that does work, but the ones that I did, that I tested, did not function. TNTE. So interestingly enough, I'm not sure where they get their flash hiders from. They might be sourcing Colt spec ones somewhere,
But I have that on my M16A3 build, and it does work on that. So I'm able to suppress that gun, which we'll be showing here in a future video. So TNTE, whatever they're using, good to go. Anderson, RIP, but also does not work. Tested that at the gun store, and it was a no-go. Double Star, tested that, and it worked. I'm not really familiar with Double Star, so I thought it was like an airsoft brand. But whatever, if you have a Double Star out there, you're in luck, I guess. Springfield Armory. Okay, this is going to get a maybe from me because I tested 2 of them. 2 Springfield Saint rifles. One of them worked, the other did not. So it comes down to tolerances one again. If you have calipers, measure the one you have at home. Smith & Wesson. This is a big yes. I tested 3 of them, and all 3 worked. I made sure to, if he had multiple rifles in the store, I tested as many as I could get sample size wise, and I could see, if it worked or not. Next up, Andrew Core or ATI. This is going to be a no, to the surprise of no one. Adams Arms, no. Bushmaster, no. FN, yes. So FN is also a military contractor, so it would make sense that their flash shatters would also work. Additionally, there was something called a Bird Dog that we tried, Bird Dog AR-15. Tried that at the store. First off, I knew it wasn't going to work just by looking at the actual cuts inside the flash hider, but then I went to wiggle the barrel around and it was loose. The whole barrel nut was loose. So Bird Dog, stay away from that brand. So, okay guys, that is the muzzle devices that work and the ones that don't. So I hope you have a little bit better information. I was not able to test an arrow precision, unfortunately. So I know that's a popular one, but you, again, just reference the calipers and all that stuff and you can figure out what works and what doesn't. All right, now let's do a little bit of, what's it called? POI Shift.
Okay, so I'm a little ashamed to show you guys this, but you know what? That's what we gotta do. So take a look here, all right? This is quite literally not my best work, you understand? I wanted to do a little POI testing here, a little POI shift. This was my group. I was only like at 50 meters, okay? And we just got this terrible gazillion MOA group. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna do a couple things. So we're gonna blame things like wind, weather conditions. I wanna say winds were calm, overcast day. We'll blame Ballistic Advantage for the barrel. We'll blame Delta Team Tactical for the trigger. We will blame EOTech maybe. We'll blame Coffee. I had the jitters maybe. Anything to separate myself from the accountability of this grouping, joking aside. So we are observing the POI shift here. So you can kind of see it's a little more level here. So this is suppressed, this is unsuppressed, and then suppressed again. So by the 3rd time, I was actually locked in and I was shooting a grouping that wasn't terrible, and I was just a little bit to the left. If I shift my 0 over to the right, I'll be hitting pretty much level at this, this target here. And then when you take that can off, it's gonna rise a little bit. So it's actually pretty decent. So it just kind of rises up, still a little bit to the left, I guess. That's pretty good. If you have a can on this, yeah, here's the thing though. There's probably a ton of variables. The muzzle device I'm using, the barrel, the ammo. There's like so many different variables. So in order to really get a good reading on what the POI shift would be, you would need to test a whole bunch of different things. And I'm just not that guy, right? I'm not Henry of 9-hole reviews. This video is brought to you by Slate Black Industries. I'm not gonna be able to give you the hardcore Henry Chan style of long range shooting where I currently live. The boys in the field don't like the MREs very much. The short and sweet is can, no can goes up, with can, it's level, so. Okay, so we are here in the dark. Okay, so here's where I'm at. This is me. And I got 2 guns here. I got the Polonium and I have the 30SD-K, so we're gonna test it out. I'm just trying to line myself up here. Okay, so first round will be the Polonium. We will take a couple shots and you guys can tell me what you see. Well, I guess we'll see in post what it looks like. I talked last week about how there's this sort of over-analysis of suppressors where people are like, well,
what mount do I use? What hub do I use?
This simplifies it. And it feels as if this it rejects the modern notion of, planned obsolescence, how things will come out and it's almost like they're made to expire. They have a shelf life so that you buy more of them. That might not be so prevalent when it comes to suppressor mounting systems, but it does feel as if everyone jumped, it was like I was asking friends about this who had been in the suppressor game a little bit longer. Guys jump from the ASR to the Chemo to now the Reardon, like these are the hot things. And those are expensive. When you go to buy a flash hider, flash hiders are probably 80 bucks. The hub mount can be maybe 100 depending on what you're choosing, somewhere in there. You know, you're probably looking to spend between $150 to $200 just to get the can initially set up on one gun. Now, every single other rifle that you go and put a muzzle device on, you're gonna have to probably spend another $80 or $90 per gun. With a A2 birdcage, they're very cheap. You can get them from like Sarco, or if you have Colts, wherever you can find a USGI birdcage, this will mount to it. So there's that. Additionally, they recommend, Griffin does, that you mount this with shims as opposed to crush washers. I have mounted it to guns with crush washers and it's fine, but I think it's kind of like a CYA on their part that you use shims. This currently has shims installed, but I also have a Colt that does not, and just has a crush washer, and I use that and it worked just fine.